Welcome back to the Watch Insider. My name is Brian. This is Tim Masso, and thank you guys for logging on. So it's been a great week thus far. I hope everybody's enjoying their week, the turn of winter into spring. So it's starting to get warm here in Philadelphia, so wherever you guys are, thank you guys for logging in. We have an exciting show. We've got a lot of amazing watches here from the vault. I think one of the best mixes that we've actually had in a long time.
Yeah, and some of these watches are remarkably accessible for what they represent. So I think we go from the unobtainable peaks of horology to something that might be yet to be discovered value in independent watchmaking.
Yeah, so lots of great pieces. We're going to talk about each and every one of these. And then additionally, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to message us in the chat because we'll be answering questions all throughout the show. I have my usual watch plug for the Watchbox app. There was a comment, I want to say last week, where they asked for a live demo of the app, which we're actually going to be putting together in the next several weeks, and we're going to have a really cool live demo of the app on the Wednesday show. So stay tuned for that. But again, for those of you that haven't downloaded the Watchbox app, please run to the Apple Store and do so. You are really missing out.
I cannot overemphasize, too, that if you guys want to win our Birdveille horological sculpture, and I'm going to lead with this because I've given away hats, I've given away ties, I've given away etceterini from the various brands. This is not swag from Baselworld. This is handmade acrylic horological sculpture, repurposed components from watches and clocks in a handmade and hand-finished acrylic skull. So if you've got chronometry
That's what
on
Tim's brain actually looks like.
Acrylic anatomy that can be yours, guys. I'm going to post the link so you can enter the contest in the live chat. Stay tuned.
So we are going to get things started with a what's on the wrist, and then we're going to follow it up with a short poll. So Tim, why don't you get us started off with what you're wearing tonight?
All right, you guys know my Reverso tourbillon, so I'm going to show you the watch that some of you have never seen. Now this is my Swatch System Frog. That's right, it's exactly what it sounds like, a System 51 in frog green. My mom sent me this one for my birthday a year ago, and it's been the best $150 watch I've ever owned. It's actually got a 90-hour automatic winding mechanical movement, and check that out. It has a plastic anchor and escape wheel, and a year later, somehow it is still running. This watch defies everything I thought I knew about watchmaking.
Tonight on the wrist, well, you're actually double wristing tonight, aren't you?
I am. With the Reverso and the Frog, it's almost like I'm wearing 2.5 watches.
So tonight on the wrist, I am wearing an FP Journe brass tourbillon. So this is an early reference piece. This particular example with the gold dial is from 2002. I actually had this watch on the show last week, and I really enjoyed, wearing the watch. It's super comfortable, it's different, and I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah,
I'll let you give it a whirl. So, this was one of the first, FP Journe's first reference that he created for commercial purposes was the tourbillon. And this particular watch is based on that original design. So he did make some tweaks over the years, and this is the final version of the watch before it transitioned over into the deadbeat.
Yes, and just to give you an idea of how rare this model is, it was made from 99 to 2003. It is the first generation tourbillon remontoir. You always know because it's the one with the hole in the dial at 6 o'clock, but this is actually the fourth generation. Now, a total of about 400 of the first generation tourbillon remontoir were made at max. This generation, about 220 to 320, so you're talking about an exceptionally rare watch. A few of the hallmarks of the fourth generation: the small screws on the dial, as you can see, flat cock for the remontoir, the absence of any kind of reference to subscriptions, because it wasn't the first series subscription, and the fact that the number printing on the power reserve scale is about the same size as the minutes on the scale for hours and minutes. So that is a fourth series, roughly 2002 to 2003 FP Journe tourbillon remontoir.
And another really interesting thing is that, so he made, as Tim said, he made around 400 total of the remontoir tourbillons, 99 of which are the ruthenium tourbillons.
That's right.
So that out of that 400, automatically, estimated 400, 100 of which are already just going to be the rutheniums. So that only leaves around another, call it 250 to 300 of these original brass turbs.
The great watches to own, because if you're going to own an FP Journe, really the two icons, the pillars that really set him apart were the Resonance and the Tourbillon Remontoir, both world firsts.
Exactly.
So the Tourbillon being the first, I guess that is the bigger of the two main pillars.
And we don't have a picture because I just thought of it, but I was doing a little bit of research last night into the early opuses. And you can pull up, if you go online and you type in Harry Winston Opus 1, you'll see that F.P. Journe was actually the watchmaker that Harry Winston utilized for the first opus pieces. So that he did an automatic, a resonance, and this Remontoire tourbillon in a total, I want to say, of 18 pieces per movement, and a total of 18 pieces, six of which for each movement, and each one of those 6 was a one-off. So you should go online, take a look. They're absolutely awesome, and sort of that's the essence of what the Opus line was sort of originated to be. But answering the comments on the chat, Tim and I are double wristing. That is the thing to do now. My other watch on the wrist is my Jaeger-LeCoultre. So this is a watch I've been wearing a lot recently. So this is a watch from the late 90s. You guys can tell where the inspiration is drawn from, but it was done at a time in which the Paul Newman it was not anywhere near what it was in that day. In order to create this watch, a Paul Newman Daytona was actually deconstructed down to the part level, and these actual components are pretty much to the micron the exact same as those that would go, in a Paul Newman watch, to the point where the pushers, the crown, the bezel, and everything like that is pretty much identically the same, even the case. But so these are watches that we were able to discover actually that there was a lot of movement components left and case and dial components left for watches that hadn't been produced within the series of 500. So we reached out, we had those watches put together, and we actually have available some of these, Jaeger-LeCoultre pieces.
Yeah, 2 thoughts, guys. Don't worry about the Paul Newman. They put it back together. Also, remember, back when this tribute was made, a Paul Newman Daytona was a $10,000 to $15,000 purchase. No one had any idea what they were going to become, so this was remarkably prescient. Also, in as much as this was originally made in that early millennial period and many parts were left unassembled, the fact that later on we got together with Chevril to finish the line is almost like a affordable chronograph Patek Philippe 5105P, where they found old 990 movements and decided to case them up. It's a little bit of a continuation made from parts left over from the first run.
Yeah, so very cool. And if you guys have any interest in any of these watches, just don't hesitate to reach out, and we should be able to assist.
Absolutely. And for you guys who are asking about the raffle, I am putting... Oh, we have a question from Marco. How much? What do they cost, roughly?
I have to check. I want to say, I think it's like around 4,000 or 5,000, somewhere in that range.
Okay, good stuff. By the way, it is a Swiss movement. It is a Swiss watch. Okay, so real quick, guys. I can see Eddie's interested, too. You're going to want to contact Brian because it seems like we might be able to do a quick business in these Chevrils through the live chat box tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to type my email in if anybody has any questions.
All right. I'll also say this. Matt Forster, at approximately the $20,000 price point, I agree the Chronomètre Bleu is unbeatable. Buy soon between the price rises. Okay, just to be clear, the retail price of the Chronomètre Bleu is $22,800 if I'm current. What is the wait list like if you wanted to buy one of those today, if you got on a wait list? Is it Daytona crazy?
It's not quite Daytona. I mean, yes, theoretically it is Daytona crazy because of just how few they make. So it's just as difficult, if not more difficult, for us to get a CB to somebody than it is to get them a stainless steel Daytona. So, at this point, I mean, again, the guy made 650 watches last year. I don't think many of them were CBs because of some of the issues that they had with the dial. But
they changed suppliers.
In a good year, it's no more than 100 pieces for the world. So, I mean, you can imagine 100 of that watch, it's extraordinarily difficult to get. Yeah. And he has no real intention of increasing production.
It was like 110 last year, the total production of that watch, which is actually a high proportion when you consider how many references and variations on references F.P. Journe has. There's only one CB. There are platinum and rose gold versions of other watches, multiple dial options. The CB is the CB. You take it as is or not at all.
Yeah, I would love a line extension somehow, some way. If you were to, do that same configuration but with a different movement, would be very interesting. Possibly even discontinue the CB. So, let's say he gets rid of that and then he comes up with another idea to use that combo, obviously driving up the overall secondary market value of the CB and then possibly just do something different.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for discontinuing a watch and like properly ending it. FP Journe's done that in the past. His new perpetual calendar is nothing like his original perpetual, and you're going to see that tonight. Also, Mike Casey and I just got on the waiting list for the FP Journe CB. I feel blessed. Indeed, you are, and when you take delivery, you will feel doubly blessed. So let's dive into Journe since we've already referenced the man.
So this is a watch that literally just came in. It is new old stock. And this is a rose gold. I mean, the watch is just freaking fantastic. So this is a 38 millimeter rose gold black dial Octa Divine. So rose gold black dial, what exactly does that mean? That means that this watch is not black label, which you have to sort of, apply for, and then they will allocate the watch. This is Espace only, meaning so this watch can only be sold in FP Journe Espaces, those retailers that have an Espace, or a boutique. And this watch can be stocked where a black label piece would not be stocked. So why I love this watch is, number one, the combination between the red gold and the black dial is absolutely superb. Additionally, you have the 38 millimeter with the red gold movement. So this particular watch was made at the very tail end before FP Journe transitioned into the 40 millimeter case size. You also have the older style Octa Divine, and why I love it is that you have the breakup of the dial there with that sub-second. So you sort of have that white ring going through the center of the dial, and I just think that the layout of the dial is fabulous. The size to me is absolutely perfect. I'm a huge fan of the FP Journe 38 millimeter sizes. And, this is a watch based on when it was made, its characteristics, the fact that it's a, black dial piece, there could very well have ever been less than 5 of these watches made.
Yeah, that is important to remember because FP Journe has had so many dial, case metal, and case size variations, as well as in the early days brass movements and ruthenium movements. You do find that 650 to 900 watch production each year gets awfully segmented, creating unique variations, almost like the muscle cars of the late 60s, when you would find a sublime Hemi-Cuda convertible with positraction and a 4-speed. Like, you would find these unique permutations born of the number of options available, resulting in examples that are almost unique. And remember, there have been no 38s since 2015, so this was truly a last licks watch.
Yeah, so, on top of that, the fact that it's new old stock, it was just, again, it came in and I was just absolutely blown away.
Yeah, you'll be the first owner, other than us.
Exactly. What do we got next?
Let's stick with FP Journe, but in a form you may not have anticipated.
Okay, fine. So here we have, I'll let you hold up the watch, right here we have a Ulysse Nardin 175-piece limited edition mono pusher chronograph. Why is this so special? Why? Well, A, it's freaking gorgeous. B, this watch, the movement, was designed by THA, who was created by Denis Flageolet, Jaeger-LeCoultre, and the man himself, FP Journe. So, Denis Flageolet, founder of De Bethune, Jaeger-LeCoultre, who goes, Jaeger-LeCoultre brand, and FP Journe, the FP Journe brand, 3 is sort of the grandfathers of modern day independent watchmaking, had a white label movement manufacturer. And that movement is what's in this watch. So, you have a Ulysse Nardin, but you actually have a watch designed by 3 of the godfathers of modern day independent watchmaking.
Yes, and FP Journe was the one of the 3 who was most involved in the design of the movement, and Denny actually wound up with the movement. He bought the rights to it, him and David Zanetta, in 2002 when they founded De Bethune, and they put this same caliber into their DB1. So the DB1, the very first of the De Bethune, was powered by the same movement. It was also used in the Cartier Mono Pusher Tortue, and if you remember that reference, it would have been the Cartier MC45 caliber inside. It has a number of refinements. In addition to being a column wheel mono pusher chronograph, it actually has a unique arrangement that minimizes the jump. Despite the use of a lateral clutch, you get the lateral clutch without the jump of a lateral clutch by reducing the play between the mechanisms involved. So this was a very innovative movement that was used in very few watches. Cartier Ulysse Nardin, and de Bethune, and that's pretty heady company. Now, this one was built in yellow gold. You can see this was sold in 1998 for the 175th anniversary of the man whose name is on the dial, Ulysse Nardin. Many assume that it's like Jaeger-LeCoultre or Girard-Perregaux. It's not a hyphenated combination of names. It's the first and the last name of the man who founded the company in 1848. So this is his tribute watch, 175 in yellow gold, in rose gold, and in white gold, made for that year. And it's classically cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's classically cool. It's very retro. I mean, to me, this is sort of like the best that the 90s and 2000s has to offer, these sorts of pieces. And what's crazy is that the 90s now is almost like vintage at this point. And I think that you're going to see a lot of watches like this from the call it early to mid late the 90s and early 2000s that are going to start coming out of drawers that, really it's going to reshape the pre-owned watch space, just because I think the watches are that nice and they're that hard to find, and they were made in an era where there was a lot less production.
That's a fact. If you actually look at the Ulysse Nardin trilogy of timepieces created by Ludwig Oxlin, I think, considering cloisonné enamel dials and celestial complications that no one else was even thinking of doing at the time, those are legendary pieces that I've seen selling for well under $100,000. I do believe those will be the auction stars of tomorrow. As 90s watchmaking becomes more en vogue, it was a recovery era. There was some terrible stuff, I'm not going to lie to you, but there was also some wonderful stuff that paved the way for what we know today as, I would say, the golden era of independent horology.
100%. So we'll take a look to see if there's any questions in the chat here. While we're doing that, we'll start with another beautiful independent piece here. So here we have a Daniel Roth. Hold that here. Yellow gold salmon dial, Breguet-inspired retrograde dial with a yellow gold deployment buckle. So this particular case is absolutely synonymous with Daniel Roth. This watch was produced before Bulgari took over Genta Roth. And to me, again, another beautiful watch from the 90s. It's got that retro inspiration. And, this is the kind of watch that was the movement designed by GP?
It is a GP. I believe it's a GP 3300 based on the size of it. The 3300 is one of the larger options with date. You can see it's got GP's characteristic mainspring barrel release adjacent to the crown. Beautiful, even and almost micro perlage that's characteristic of GP decoration. It's a true high horology movement. It's 3¼ millimeters thick. The case is known as the Ellipso Curvex, and it was one of the elements that Bulgari retained after buying Daniel Roth and Gerald Genta. They were one manufacturer in Le Sentier. Bulgari bought them in 2000, of course, subsequently Bulgari purchased by LVMH, but in 2010 they were all rolled into manufacture Bulgari, which was controversial at the time, but I actually think Bulgari has done great things with the manufacturer they bought, and they've justified putting their own masthead on it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a very logical move for Bulgari to make. At the time, Genta and Roth had a lot of watchmaking know-how, and it was very much a, call it, male-inspired line, and they were known for building high horology pieces. Bulgari really wanted to put that into their repertoire, and I think they wanted to speak to a new audience, and, to ramp up in going to high horology is not easy. And I think that it allowed them to purchase pedigree extremely quickly and also have access to know-how. And I do, I think they've done a great job with it.
I would also say this, both Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth, especially Genta, had long since divested themselves of that company by the time LVMH arrived in 2011, and Genta was basically out of it by 1996. So a lot of people say, how dare they fool Gerald Genta? He wasn't involved for like 15 years. So
Screwed on crown.
Yeah. It's an impressive piece.
It's a beautiful watch with the salmon dial, and it's got that sort of anchor at the end of the seconds hand. I mean,
it's really quirky because it's got loom plots on a dial with unloomed hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those, again, it's a quirky piece that I just think just works, for whatever reason, it just works so incredibly well.
I'll also say this, that watch is called the Le Sentier, and it is the essential Daniel Roth shape. He founded the company in '89. He was pretty much done working there by 2004, but in the time he was there, he helped to popularize the idea of non-round watches by independents, and that's been exploited by absolutely everyone, from Langenheim to Erwerk.
Yeah. So, Cool. So next watch on the list is a Reverso that Tim actually hadn't even seen before. So this, as everybody knows, and if you don't know because you don't watch the show, I've been on the hunt for the perfect Reverso. This is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso Shadow. Here you have a almost patina-esque would be the wrong word, luminescent indices. But what's so cool is almost like the gunmetal beaded finish on the case. It's extremely wearable. It's not that large of a watch. You've got a black dial. Just, I think it's absolutely cool. And it's limited to 500, I think.
I'm not sure if it was a limited edition or just limited production, I'll be honest with you. When I say I haven't seen this watch, I know of it well. It's a bit of a legend. I've just never encountered one in person. It is a little bit smaller than the Grand Tai case. It actually has a different case number, and you can see to good advantage from this angle that the dial has a double finish. It's considerably darker and less reflective about the center dial than the hour track. Now, this watch is more than a couple of years old, and I do believe it has actual tritium patina on the dial. I don't think this is luminova. The other thing about the case is that it is actually media blasted, and that's the genesis of the name Shadow. Yes, the dial is black. Yes, it was a different look for the 90s and early 2000s, but it's the media blasted case that I believe is completely unique among Reversos. I've never seen another Reverso that is finished like that, and to me, when you can say you've seen something only once as a lifelong JLC fan, as a guy who sees thousands of watches a year, that's really saying something. This is a rare watch.
I mean, I just think it's the color scheme, the provenance of it, just the overall aesthetic. I just think it's like super sleek and cool. It caught my eye. It was one of the watches that recently came in, and I just had to bring it on the show.
Yeah, we'll do a little wrist shot. Actually, maybe we'll do a comparative wrist shot. I'll put it next to my Tourbillon.
Now, it's a little bit thick. Can you explain why that is?
Well, I mean, it's a Reverso. The main thing is it's probably a caliber 822 in there. It's actually a little bit smaller than the Grand Tai case on my wrist, and my watch is a little bit thick. The thing about the watch is that the 822 is a tough caliber, not necessarily a thin caliber, whereas the tourbillon in my Platinum 2 is actually a little bit thinner than the 822 caliber. But they're gorgeous watches. The shaped calibers are sized for the case. This is manufactured watchmaking at its best, and if we want to take a little tour of Le Sentier tonight, we've had Daniel Roth of Le Sentier and Jaeger-LeCoultre of right across town. It's a small watchmaking world in Switzerland.
Yeah. Alrighty, any questions on the chat yet? Guys are quiet tonight.
You know what? It's starting to get nice outside. People are out enjoying the air. I will say this. We have a question from one of our users regarding whether that Reverso is a 36 or a 42. It's like it's a 39, 38. I'll show it even lug to lug with my Grand Tai. Now, my Platinum tourbillon is 42. You can see just ever so slightly.
Similar aesthetic on the dial. I mean, again, obviously a very different color dial, but it almost has like a similar feel.
The Grand Tai is just a little bit bigger. I don't believe the Shadow is built in the Reverso Classique case because that would be 38 millimeters. I want to say it's somewhere between 39 and 40, but it's a good size, classically proportioned. It comes very close to that golden ratio, aspect ratio of 1.618 to 1. So it's a very Reverso, if you want to put it that way. It looks the part, and proportionally, it is the part.
We just had a question on how much it is. I am looking that up right now.
That's a super cool question, so I would like to know.
Yeah. Let's see here. Tim, while I look this up, why don't you continue to entertain, and we'll go to the next watch.
I want to show you guys something that's near and dear to my heart, because the only time I've ever had a watch brand owner on the show.
$5,450.
Which is a very fair price, I have to say, for that piece. You won't see another, and that's coming from a guy who sees it all. So I had Journe Vertelen on the show when we were back in Miami.
Complete with box and papers, too.
Yes,
wow.
So you'll know when your watch was born. But Journe, and he is the Vertelen of Linda Vertelen. Morten Linda, his business partner, they're both from Denmark. And in the spirit of another great Danish product, Legos, they designed from 2006 a series of highly modular sports watches with a winglet case designed to dock with their land sports and water sports computers, and straps of uniform sizing and shape that were interchangeable across the models. Now, this one is known as the One 2.2, and it's Linda Verdelen's take on a standalone diver. I say standalone diver because their idea was always that you would just put their diving computer on the top. It would lock into place. It's called the Reef. That's that. Now, you've got a real diving tool in the 21st century sense. But with the One, which you see here, they decided to go with a traditional rotating dive bezel. So if you wanted to go au naturel without the computer, you could also dive with this watch in that form. Now, it's remarkably robust, but also remarkably thin, as they used an ETA 2892A2. So this is actually a sports watch with a rotating bezel that you can slip underneath the cuff. Also, because all Linda Verdelen watches essentially have the same physical footprint on your wrist, you know that this one is 49.5 millimeters lug to lug and 46. But the thing about this lug to lug is that the case is so squared off and cushion profiled, it's easy to wear even on a small wrist like mine.
Yeah, let me try this on. So,
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, what really drew me to this particular example of the watch was you've got the sort of high polish and brush finish of the case. Simple, straightforward rubber strap, and I really like that sort of loom look on the indices. Like to me, this just screams everything about Linda Verdelen.
Yes.
And you know, I think that it's a brand that doesn't get enough. It doesn't get enough attention. I mean, I think that they produce a watch that you know exactly what it is when you see it, which to me is one of the most important things when you're creating a watch, is that you can recognize it from a distance. But I mean, this thing is incredibly comfortable. I mean, so
it fits much better than any AP Offshore or Hublot I've ever encountered.
Exactly. So this fits me incredibly well, and I'd say there's pretty much no offshore that I can wear comfortably. So I think that this is a super cool sports watch, and you know it's different. It's from an independent manufacturer, and they've been around for a long time. So I mean, it's not like they're going anywhere.
They've done some cool things too. They were one of the first to sell online. They were one of the first to open up a pre-owned program where they would actually buy back their own watches and then sell them reconditioned with a warranty as Linda Verdelen Vintage. True, their first watches came out in 2006, but it's a little bit of a cheeky nickname. I appreciate the fact that they're one of the few brands that actually likes their watches enough to buy them back and take them as trades.
This thing is amazing. I should buy this.
It's powered by the same movement you'll find in the old Bond Seamaster. It's just a more distinctive and thoughtful case design. Plus, because all of their cases have essentially been the same shape and geometry, all of their watches from the beginning still dock with their modular land sports and water sports computers. And I've got something actually even a little bit cooler here. This used to be on my old set. Well, the brochure for it was back at Watch You Want.
Oh, wow.
This is the 2009 44-piece limited edition grade 5 titanium Linda Verdelen Spidolite SA. SA for Sven Andersen. He did the work on the movement in this watch. He actually repurposed a new old stock vintage A-Shield 1876 automatic from the 70s, reconditioned, decorated, and regulated it for fellow Danes, Linda and Verdelen. And so you see his characteristic 18-karat blue-gold rotor on the movement. Still 300-meter water resistant. And again, like the others, you see the winglets, it docks with their computers. So you can have a diving alarm, data recorder, backlight, all that good stuff on top of your mechanical watch, and then undock it and decouple it to where the skeleton dial, and yes, the dial is also titanium, Sven Andersen powered Spidolite SA. And in 2009, they made 44 of these. Most years, they only make a few hundred watches. They are legitimately a low-volume manufacturer. And as you can see, this one's on a leather strap to give you an idea of how you can dress up a Linda Verdelen. If you don't want to wear it on the rubber, like the one that Brian is wearing, you can actually get a leather strap. You can get calf. You can get alligator. I've seen them make exotic hides. And you can get very colorful straps if you prefer that. Plus, FP Journe is a member of the AHCI. Sven Andersen is a member of the AHCI. I guarantee you, you will pay less for this watch than the FP Journe on our table. We did have a question about how much the Journe costs tonight from an inquiring potential buyer.
We actually haven't priced it out yet, so if anybody is interested, just email me and I will get you guys the details right away.
Jeff, you want to email Brian to get the details on that watch?
And I put my email into the chat, so it's just brian@golfbergwatches.com. But this is incredibly thin and light. It almost feels like it's titanium and it's stainless steel.
Well, this one here is grade 5.
And this one is steel, though.
Yeah, when they do titanium, believe me, you know it. It's like feather light. That watch is really slim because they used a real ETA, not a Solita in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they make this watch with a black dial, so that's what I'm going to try and find out about. But moving on, what else do we have here on the table that we haven't touched on yet?
We got one hell of a Rolex and one hell of a Longa.
Why don't we start with the Rolex here? So here we have a Rolex Turnograph Datejust in yellow gold with a brown sunburst dial and a yellow gold riveted bracelet, all in high polish. So this thing is bonkers.
Yeah, the Turnograph, guys, also known as the Thunderbird. This is a reference 1625. It's in outstanding condition. Now, it was made around 1970, 1971. So take that into consideration when looking at the fullness of the lugs and the quality of the dial. This is a wonderful survivor. Now, if you don't know where the watch got the nickname Thunderbird, it got it from its rotating bezel that made it an excellent candidate for standard issue by the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds aerobatic exhibition team. They're the Air Force version of the Blue Angels during the 1950s. The original Datejust Turnographs came out in the mid to late 50s. It actually debuted as a standalone model in late 1952 as just the 6202 Turnograph. Aside from the Zerograph, which is a semi-mythical, short-run, almost prototype watch, this was the first serially produced rotating bezel Rolex when the 6202 came out. It was actually prior to the Submariner by a few months, and its actual issue by the U.S. Air Force makes it one of precious few Rolex products, Rolex or Tudor, to have actually been issued by the U.S. Armed Forces to its servicemen. Now, the last of the Turnographs were made in about 2010, 2011. All versions are discontinued, but what really sets this one apart is the fact that it has a matching gold rivet-style bracelet. A sensational watch. Granted, this one's not so much for servicemen as it is perhaps for a private jet pilot, being both vintage, immaculate, and hey, let's just add it, full gold. This is a rich example of a memorable Rolex, and if you were never really a Datejust guy, just a little too simple, not technical enough, this is the one you want to consider.
Yeah, I mean, this has, all the makings of, a beautiful vintage piece, without that huge hefty price tag that's coming associated now with older style Rolexes. So, it's definitely a bright polished yellow, and, it's also a very yellow. Yellow gold, the alloying of it can change over time, over the years, and this happens to be, a bright yellow as opposed to a more toned down, and but with that
no tarnish.
No tarnish. I mean, but with that brown sunburst, I mean, it just looks awesome.
What you really can't capture here, guys, and I kind of wish you could, is that in addition to all of the vintage features evident in the watch from the soldier shot you're looking at, it does have a wonderfully domed plexiglass, so you get those off-axis distortion effects. Lovely vintage watch, and again, how many times do you see a Thunderbird on a full gold rivet bracelet?
Yeah, and you could also transition this to a like a really cool strap as well. If you wanted to change it up, you could put this on maybe a taupe or a gray color strap, really change the look, and move back and forth.
That's not an all-the-time watch on the bracelet.
No.
That's a little bit too fabulous for me, too Miami Beach. But you throw that on like a shell cordovan in brown, all of a sudden you've got a watch you can wear all the time.
So I just got a question on the chat. Pilot Style 123, is the guy on the left wearing a Paul Newman ? That is exactly the type of question that I want to get. And because you're watching the Watch Insider, I'm going to tell you that no, this is actually a Jaeger-LeCoultre. If you scroll to the beginning of the show, once it's fully live, you'll be able to see a little bit more about the watch. If you're not a fan of the show and you're just looking from a distance and you're just somebody walking off the street, maybe yes, sometimes it's a Paul Newman.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. It's somewhere between an actual Paul Newman and like a Chambers Street Paul Newman.
Yeah. I mean, again, so it's a Jaeger-LeCoultre Tribeca. We've got one more watch.
That's a completely
left on
different
the table.
side of New York. I didn't even think of that. Tribeca. All right.
So here we have a beautiful A. Lang & Son. I probably butchered it. I'm probably going to get, filleted. Lumen. So this is a series of watches that Lange has done over the years. And now I want to say, has it been 3 references or 4 references?
I believe it's been 3, the Grand Lange 1 Moon, the Grand Lange 1, and the Zeitwerk.
And the Zeitwerk. So the Zeitwerk is probably the most prolific of all of them in terms of, let's call it results at auction. But this happens to be one of my favorites as well. So, and what so sets this watch apart is the skeletonized dial, and also with the highly luminescent indices and Roman numerals there on the dial. So I would say of all the limited editions that Lange has done, this series has probably been the most successful.
Yeah, this is by far the coolest thing Lange has ever made. As a series, the Lumen goes a step beyond the Luminous. You might be familiar with the old Luminous dials. This is nothing like that. Those had lume on the hands and some of the indices and numerals. This has fully luminescent discs underneath a smoked sapphire that allows in just enough activation energy so that when the date jumps, you actually see a full luminescent disc already charged. Now, of course, you can also see the engine-turned perlage of the movement plate beneath. So it's a lot more than just a luminous watch. It's a watch with depth, it's a watch with nuance, it's a watch with an otherworldly nighttime shot, because you can see both the actual date and then you can see the rest of the discs glowing softly beneath the smoked sapphire. And of course, it's a Grand Lange 1, which means it has a big and beautiful, perfectly sized movement on the back. This is your 2nd generation of Grand Lange 1. Absolutely gorgeous, big, bold, 200 pieces, and let me assure you, 200 was not enough for the world in this case.
Yeah, so I mean, 200 from a brand like Lange is absolutely nothing. And these were watches that retailers were lucky if they even got one. And many of which were selling, these watches were selling well over the retail price. And why I think that this particular line is so cool is for a brand that is so buttoned up and conservative, and when you look at the watches that they produce, to make a watch like this, that's for them, avant-garde, it was such a curveball that I think that guys that hadn't been watching Lange previously were brought into the brand, at least to see these guys are producing some really cool things.
Yeah, and it feels the business and it looks the business on the wrist. The thing is, it looks good from across the room. There's some watches that are just too extravagant to wear because they broadcast you to the entire curbside cafe. This watch, well, God is in the details, and the details only really come out up close. It's a handsome watch until you get close, then it's a spectacular watch and an event in and of itself. Watch guys will know it. Others will give you compliments, but for the most part, they'll leave you alone. And you can't exactly say that for some high horology pieces that are simply too extroverted to wear all the time. This is an exception to that.
So we actually forgot to do the poll. So we will end the show with the poll and to sort of talk about what the poll was even about. So this week, Vacheron Constantin released in a big news announcement that the Vacheron Overseas is now going to have a black dial to go along with the blue dial and the, I want to say silver dial as well.
They also have a brown dial option.
No, they discontinued the brown dial.
They discontinued the brown?
They discontinued the brown.
It's out there. It's no longer in production.
Correct. So they now have, you have the Panda dial black, if we can pan back to that real quick. And you have here the, the standard black on the time-only version. So here you see it on a strap and a bracelet. Each of the watches comes with a bracelet, croc strap, and a rubber strap. So you get all 3, and it's their, proprietary, adjusting system. So this is the new dial configuration. And, I am curious what everybody thinks about this color versus the blue, which is already out right now. So here you have the blue time only in all the different variations on the straps. And we're going to throw up a quick poll. It's a simple this or that. Do you like the black or do you like the blue? Curious to hear what you guys think.
I will say that the brown dial, at least as of today, is still cataloged on Vacheron's website, so I thought it was still out there. I would say if you have any inkling that you want that one, that is the most innovative and different of the dial options they offered on this 3rd generation Overseas. That would be my choice, the brown dial.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous, and in my opinion, it'll stand the test of time better than the current blue dial fetish. But there you go, black, the classicist.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think that, again, agree to disagree, but I do think that the blue is probably going to be the one that really stands the test of time. The brown will probably be the shortest production run. So, all things considered, they probably, well, I shouldn't say probably, they've only made the brown for a couple of years. And, the blue and silver have done better than the brown in terms of what's selling right now. But again, that's why, there's all the time in the world in that, 5, 10, 15 years from now, when you look back and you think, if Vacheron's booming again and you have a 2-year production run on a brown dial overseas, that's all it really takes.
Yeah, it's tough because I'll be honest, the overseas is as close as Vacheron gets to a mass-produced watch, so they tend to make a lot of them, and whenever you see anything that's rare, that is by definition the exception. Yet to be seen around these parts, the overseas automatic ultra-thin.
Yes.
I've never seen one. I would be glad. If anyone wants to send me a wrist shot, I will throw that up on my show this Friday.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's all that we have for tonight. And guys, so some of these watches are currently on our website available for sale. Some are not yet available for sale, but they will be. If there are watches that are on our website that that you want myself or Tim to bring onto the show to maybe talk about in a little bit more detail and discuss, please, again, my email's in the chat. It's brian@golfbergwatches.com. And, just shoot me an email. Let me know which watch you would want me to bring on. And if I can do that, I will.
2 quick thoughts before we part, guys. Tim_Masso. Follow me on Instagram. My watches are big, colorful, and 3-dimensional, kind of like me. And Hong Kong. We have the Twin Peaks now. Philadelphia and Hong Kong. Either way, you can visit Watchbox in your location of preference. If it's more convenient for you to fly into the watch mecca of Hong Kong, check out Josh, Zoe, and our entire cast of characters with some of the coolest watches you will find, east or west.
Well, this is the Watch Insider. My name is Brian. This is Tim. And thank you guys for logging on tonight.